A digital crackdown is sweeping across Europe. The world's richest man, Elon Musk, is not happy. As he fights against the EU's Digital Services Act, the European Commission has now launched an investigation into X's AI tool, Grok. So, who will win this battle? Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. Now, we know Elon Musk is no fan of the European Union. Last year, he was fined €120 million under its Digital Services Act and has now been summoned by French prosecutors over his AI tool, Grok, being used to create explicit images of women and children. The multi-billionaire has also called the Spanish Prime Minister a fascist totalitarian over plans to ban social media for under-16s.
Since his infamous sync stunt when he took over Twitter, Elon Musk has continued to grab headlines with his outspoken views on his rebranded X platform. He used it to support Donald Trump's election campaign.
A star is born, Elon.
And is increasingly interfering in European politics, championing far-right organisations such as Germany's AfD party. And he even appeared virtually at a huge rally in London organised by far-right activist Tommy Robinson. Musk uses his platform to slam European left-leaning leaders and policies, recently calling Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez a tyrant and traitor over the country's plans to ban under-16s from social media. X has already been fined $140 million under the EU's Digital Services Act for using, quote, deceptive blue ticks and a lack of advertising transparency. Now, the multi-billionaire is facing further fines as the bloc investigates X's AI tool, Grok.
We have seen non-consensual deepfakes of women, and we have seen child sexual abuse material. In Europe, no company will make money by violating our fundamental rights.
In addition, earlier this month, French police raided X offices in Paris over allegedly unlawful data and abuse material, and they're even seeking to question Musk himself. He denies any wrongdoing. And while expressing his anger on X with memes and satire, he frames these battles as a fight for free speech in Europe.
You don't actually have freedom of speech in Europe.
The number of users on X has stagnated since Musk took over, with many abandoning the platform, but it does still remain influential.
Elon Musk!
Despite the EU's attempts to regulate the digital space, many are asking how much impact Brussels can actually have on the world's richest man and his tech bros across the Atlantic.
Well, let's bring in our guests for this one. Joining us from Bristol in the UK, we have the technology journalist Will Guyatt. From Innsbruck in Austria, we have Matthias Kettemann. He is Professor of Innovation Law. That's at the University of Innsbruck. And I'm delighted to say, here with me in the studio, we have Dominic O'Meara. He's the CEO and founder of Supernova. And Julia Hornle, she is Professor of Internet Law at Queen Mary University. You're all very welcome to this roundtable. Will, I'll come to you first. For a South African who lives in the United States, Elon Musk has an awful lot to say about Europe, doesn't he? What's his problem?
Well, I think he has a problem with everybody, to be fair. Anybody that disagrees with his view of a free and open internet. And by the way, that's just Elon Musk's view of a free and open internet, because he is a man that quite freely froze non-disclosure agreements around his own businesses. But what we're finding increasingly is, as countries speak out against behaviour and decisions and policies that are being made on, particularly on X and Grok, he is angrily reacting, very, very regularly now, to the extent that he's personally abusing leaders across Europe, putting photos of doing deepfake photos of Keir Starmer, for example, in a bikini.
Just come in on that, Matthias. I mean, how to lose friends, lose influence and lose business and pretty much lose countries. His strategy is appalling here, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's appalling and it's illegal. And we've seen what has happened to Twitter, to X, since he has taken that over. I don't know a lot about cars or about rockets, but if he is really doing the same thing, if he's as good as he's running social media, because that's something I do know about, and he's doing everything wrong when it comes to Twitter, to X. So how good is he actually at running a company that does rockets? Is that going well? Because social media, he's doing a very, very bad job.
Thank you for that. Yulia, just on that point, what's his problem with the Digital Services Act? This is the European Union's method of regulation and looking at content creation and basically policing it. So he doesn't like it.
He doesn't like it because the Digital Services Act is trying to prevent misinformation, disinformation. It's trying to protect children. It's trying to impose obligations on social media to comply with the law. And obviously, Elon Musk is not a neutral operator. He's a deeply political operator, and he uses his technology basically to promote right-wing extremism across Europe, which I think we in a liberal democracy do not approve of, unfortunately.
Dominic, just come in on the Digital Services Act. I think most countries in the European Union welcome it and they want some guidance on this. And he is kicking and screaming against anything to do with it.
Well, he is. He's describing the Spanish Prime Minister as a fascist, isn't he? I think he's described the Australians as a fascist. Mind you, he uses that word pretty freely, but given his fondness for, the Nazi salute, perhaps he means it in a good way. I don't know. Perhaps that's his little way of signalling approval. But yeah, he does seem to be struggling with that legislation. He doesn't seem to be willing to adopt it in any way, and I think he's causing, this is causing a problem, of course, for legislators. Mind you, what do? Because when something is done, for example, that the fine that was brought to X in France in December was 140 million
euro. Yeah,
euros, a lot of money to most of us. I mean, a heck of a lot of money.
It's nothing to him.
This is a guy that's worth $850 billion is the latest figure that I've seen reported by Forbes. I mean, that's an astonishing and pretty much a disgraceful amount of money. And I think what we're discussing here in the case of Musk is a fundamental product of society. It's an even bigger question than any of the elements that we could put or assemble in one place. He's a product of what society has allowed or is allowing to be created.
Thanks, Dominic. Will, just come in on that point then. How does Europe deal with Musk if he's so aggressive, he's got so much money, fining him means nothing? Are we reaching a point where maybe some countries will just think we don't want your social media platforms in our country?
Well, we really are snookered, because if that happens, he is going to set up some kind of virtual private network, and that enables people to, challenge the constraints of whatever country they're based in. And let's not also forget that he now runs Starlink, which is actually, away from Elon Musk's politics and Elon Musk's behavior, a very effective way of getting the internet to people all around the world via satellite. So you find yourself with very limited means to react to this. And the moment it does get blocked, like it was temporarily in Turkey last year, Elon Musk is openly telling people how to circumvent it and offering to pay fines if people got fined, and all of these kinds of incredible things that just wouldn't have seemed possible 10 years ago if somebody was suggesting a ban. You've got somebody with so much money and seeming little regard for authority that he is prepared to kick back. And the opposite side of that too, is which we haven't yet explored, and I'm sure we might talk about more, is the increasing pressure from the US administration on Europe and other places who express an interest in what so-called US-run social media companies. They seem to not be bothered about the fact that they're operating in every other country around the world. They deem them to be US interests and therefore shouldn't be interfered with.
Matthias, just come in on the issue of freedom of speech. We hear a lot of American right-wingers telling us in Europe that we have no freedom of speech and we're being curtailed. And yet, many people are now having issues with social media. We've got governments in Spain and France and the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, looking at banning social media for under 16s. What's his issue with Europe and freedom of speech?
Well, fundamentally, this is not about free speech. This is just a political ploy. If you have the House of Representatives saying that, they are holding a hearing on this big censorship law on the DSA, that's not a censorship law. It's not about censorship. It's about regulating something, as Julia has said, in the interest of everybody. What the US currently are doing is they're just pushing their policy priorities, and basically that's making American companies as successful as possible, and small fines are already too much. The European Commission is very reluctant for that reason to be more strong in implementing the DSA, because they're basically afraid that if they give another fine to Twitter, the US president is going to invade Greenland.
Thank you, Matthias. This is fascinating stuff, Julia. Just tell me, just on the issue of the money and the fines, he clearly doesn't care. However, it's bad for business, isn't it, to be seen for negative headlines? I've noticed Tesla registrations in the UK last month down 57%. At some point, shareholders are actually going to say, just stop what you're doing.
That's right. And ultimately, advertisers and X have to ask themselves whether they're still doing the right thing. Governments who are still using X, perhaps at one point will say, well, maybe we shouldn't be using X. Users might well asking, should we migrate to a different platform? So I think from a business point of view, I'm not really sure that makes sense. From a legal point of view, X is actually currently headquartered in Ireland. So they are actually in the EU. So they have to comply with EU law. There's nothing particularly exciting about this. The US shouldn't complain about lack of sovereignty. In the US itself, we have the states implementing child protection legislation. So it's not that the US doesn't consider regulating some aspects of social media and social media content, despite the differences in freedom of speech and freedom of expression. So it's not purely a EU issue. I mean, Australia is regulating. We all know Australia has introduced a ban last December for the under-16s and has a social online safety act as well.
Julia, a lot of people will have read about Grok. What is the issue here with the AI tool that police, governments, people are seriously concerned about what this thing can do?
So Grok is obviously an AI chatbot which allows you to create content through generative AI. And it has been used, of course, to create deepfakes of, with explicit content of women. Now, they have tuned it down and have prevented some type of explicit content. But obviously, the human imagination is borderless, is boundless. So it's very difficult to control that. And obviously, X refuses to control it any further. And that has led to abuse of women, but also of children. So, it's the health of our children which are at stake here.
Dominic, I know you created Supernova, your platform, because you were just aghast at what the internet was becoming.
Yes, that's exactly right, Enda. I started it because I felt my background is in advertising. I worked in advertising for my career. I can see that, social media platforms are funded by advertising. It's advertising money that creates these things. No ad money, no social media. It's as simple as that. That's how they operate. They're not based on subscriptions, not the consumer-facing ones, the meta products, TikTok and so forth. I felt that these social networks were going to do something for good, that they would be a force for good. The opportunity is certainly there. There's a creative opportunity to do so. They haven't taken it, and that's why I started Supernova. And what I think is our main difference, pain points of difference is that we are a force for good. There is no hate or toxicity. We don't allow it, we keep it out. But we've created a product that has a very unique design. One of those unique factors is that likes aren't really likes. They're like votes for the cause of your choice. So you support a cause at onboarding, and thereafter, all of your activity is in support of that cause. We don't feature that, and we pay into an action fund from the advertising revenue that we get, and then that's then distributed to them. So it's a force for good. We don't highlight that as a reason specifically to use Supernova, but it is there as an undercurrent, so you know that all the while you're using it, you're acting, in something that will be supportive, and that helps the advertising money to find a good place.
Thank you, Dominic. Will, to you, talk to me about some of the political interventions then in Europe we've seen Musk carry out, from supporting the AfD in Germany, criticising Keir Starmer's leadership in the United Kingdom. I mean, there are so many CEOs around the world. We don't know anything about their political beliefs, and yet this guy is hyperactively getting involved in other countries' business.
Yeah, absolutely. We used to say a week is a long time in tech, but an hour seems to be quite a long time in Elon Musk's life frequently. Last week, I think there was 4 separate national news stories here in the UK about Elon Musk in one single day. So you do find yourself wondering what's next. He does seem to pick fights with those not on his side of politics. He would not call himself right wing, but he certainly leads towards policies on the right, and he will very vocally interfere in countries' affairs, stating about governments and policies without really seemingly knowing very little other than from influencers on his own platform who then make money from Elon Musk endorsing and sharing posts. And just to pick up on something that we were talking about a minute ago, declining advertising revenue clearly does not matter for Elon Musk. Over a third of advertising revenue has left X in the last year. The number of users, despite Elon Musk's protests, are lower than ever. That doesn't seem to worry him. And the fact he's now rolled that company, or is currently rolling that company into SpaceX, his very successful space exploration business, and now kind of claiming that artificial intelligence and space are interlinked, he's attempting to, further tuck that away from scrutiny about how much money it's losing. But ultimately, you may find yourself in a situation in a few years' time that the shareholders of SpaceX may grow tired of Elon Musk's exploits on X and Grok. That is entirely possible.
Thanks, Will. Matthias, to you, just give us your opinion on what happened in France the other day, the raid on his offices in Paris.
Well, since the European Commission has been dragging its feet, individual states have started to get more active. France is investigating the company for illegal practices, especially related to child sexual exploitation images. This is not so much about the DSA, which is a European law. This is more about French criminal law. And quite obviously, there is criminal content, illegal content on X, and he knows about that. Well, not necessarily he personally, but the company knows about it, and they have done a very bad job in getting that content offline. So the French authorities decided to set an example. We'll now see what steps will be taken now. But this is one of those things where you see that sometimes exercising power to protect rights is important. This gives him a bit more to think than just a fine. As they say, if you're rich enough, a fine just means you can do it, but it costs a bit.
Matthias, do you think there's a frustration at government level in Europe that they just can't deal with this guy, that he's almost above the law, whereas any small to medium business enterprise would be very keen to keep the European Union on side, get into the European market and maybe make some money, whereas he relishes aggression and fight almost?
Yeah, there's definitely something of that, but I don't think this is particularly something that concerns only social media companies. If you think about the big oil companies, it's very difficult to get them on board, in trying to make the world slightly more sustainable. So most big companies have very particular interests and have the power to see them through. But we are seeing certainly that Twitter X is a special case. Facebook and TikTok and the other big companies have been much more open towards suggestions and rulings by the Commission, and have, even if not perfectly, but still have done a decent job in implementing the majority of them. So yes, European governments are getting frustrated, and we'll be seeing more enforcement action, I would assume, in the near future.
Thank you. Julia, talk to me about the future then of social media platforms, because if governments are determined to not have this for under 16s, that's a big blow to the business model.
It's a blow to the business model, but it's sometimes overestimated. I mean, 16-year-olds are allowed to go on it. I mean, at the end of the day, it's only a delay of their interactivity on social media platforms. There are obviously questions, and the Australian experiment will tell us more about this, to what extent the ban is enforceable. Children find workarounds, and also, in a way, some of the platforms aren't covered. So will children migrate to different platforms, perhaps platforms which are more difficult to regulate? So I still think the Australian ban is a good move, because it signals that governments are not just passively waiting and seeing more suicide by girls, but they're actually doing something. So we shouldn't always just sort of focus on the enforcement of the law, because I mean, murder happens on the streets, even though murder is in a criminal code. So I think it is good that governments are taking action. I think it's good that the European Commission is enforcing, even though the European Commission obviously can only impose fines, because European law isn't criminal law. That's up to the states at the end of the day, as Matthias had said.
And being proactive.
And being proactive.
Dominic, we look at the countries in Europe who are seeking to ban social media for under 16. So you've got Spain, France, the Netherlands, the United Kingdom looking at it as well. These are big, significant countries.
Yes, and they're very big, significant countries. And I think it'd be good if they get on and take some big, significant decisions about how they're going to manage social media for their populations. On Supernova, we don't allow under 16s. We've banned them right from the start. And that's in keeping with the view that we have of how social media should work, that it should be more social. The clue's in the title, I think. We don't allow under 16s because of that, because it's on moral and common sense grounds. I mean, it just seems wrong for brains that young to be welded to telephones as much as they are, doom scrolling away. And that's a very bad thing to be doing, is doom scrolling. I mean, it's a phenomenon that affects 43% of Americans, 40% of Europeans. Are the estimations. You're talking about that number of people daily spending at least 2 hours scrolling through stuff in a frame of mind that is not positive, it is not good, but they go back and they do it because they're addicted. If you go to the demographic of Gen Z, you're looking at 18% of them spending 8 hours a day. That's a full working day doom scrolling through stuff that does not help their frame of mind. And we know this because there's a global mental health epidemic, which according to the World Health Organization is costing the world, $1 trillion annually. It's affecting a billion people, and social media could do, is playing a part in that needs to be managed.
Thanks, Dominic. Will, do you think there will be any rapprochement between Musk and the European Union this year, or is the relationship dead in the water?
No, I'm imagining sanctions from the US over intervention with US tech companies, and that sounds almost preposterous, but that is the direction of travel, unfortunately, Enda. I think we're going to find ourselves in a situation, and some of the senators' responses to requests from the UK regulator for information around the Online Safety Act just echo disrespect all round, and I think that is being encouraged. So no, I don't think there's going to be any kind of make-up with the European Union, and I don't think there's going to be any make-up with any country around the world. I think Elon Musk will continue wanting to push his agenda and want to use his platform for it. As I said at the start, he claims it's a free speech platform. By definition, no social network is a free speech platform because algorithms choose what you see, and you are not in control of that algorithm.
Matthias, it's all very worrying, isn't it, the stage we've got to? Where does President Trump come into this conversation? Because he and Musk are no longer famously friends, and yet Musk seems to be acting with the impunity almost here.
Yeah, I mean, they don't seem to be best buddies at the moment, but Musk is still a very important actor within the establishment and an important economic personality. So obviously, whatever he's doing affects U.S. interests. So he can be pretty sure that Trump will back him. That's one of the reasons why he's acting the way he is, which does surprise me, by the way, because if there's like one red line, one would think that especially Republicans have, is protecting children, right? And if you look at what Grok has been doing in the production of sexual exploitation of minors material, one would really think that this would have been a red line where especially the establishment wouldn't have been very happy with Musk. But when it comes to children, I'd like to push just a little bit back regarding the social media bans. Children also have communicative rights, and I think before we just throw children offline, why don't we really enforce the laws which we have against the companies? They are obliged to protect children. They're not doing a good job. But why should we stop children from having positive experiences online, which exist too, through limiting their online screen time, and punish the companies and not punish the children?
Thank you, Matthias. Just bringing it back to politics, Julia, he has even been pretty inflammatory about the Prime Minister of Spain, who is a left-wing leader, Pedro Sanchez, who a lot of people have a lot of respect for in Europe. And Musk has called him a fascist.
Yeah, I mean, that is just, I guess, cheap political kind of exchange with very little substance, I think. I mean, having said that, Sanchez accused social media of being sort of territories which have no government and encourage crime. So it's kind of a political, unfriendly exchange.
Is he wrong?
He isn't wrong in my view. I think social media could do much more to protect children. They could do proper risk management. They could look more in depth at their algorithms and what sort of content is being targeted to users. So I actually agree with Sanchez, but I'm sure other people probably don't.
Will, just final point to you. I mean, social media is not going away. Musk is not going away, but equally, the European Union is going nowhere.
Yeah, and that's why something has to give, and I'm not quite sure what it's going to be. And I'm somebody that's worked for those companies and covered this as a journalist for almost 20 years. But we seem to be at a point where populist opinion is that young people shouldn't have social media. There's dangers and risks, despite most European child safety charities suggesting that an all-out ban shouldn't be the way forward. Whatever is going to happen over the year ahead, I can guarantee you one thing. We will be talking about Elon Musk this time next year.
Well, I do hope you come back and talk to us on Roundtable about Will Guyatt, Matthias Kettemann, and I have Dominic O'Meara in the studio with me and Julia Hornle. Thank you all so much. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Just search for Roundtable, TRT World. But for now, from me, Enda Brady, and all the team here, goodbye and thank you for watching.